My plate was sitting on the porch step when I got there, wrapped in foil, next to the welcome mat. Not at the table, not with my family. On the porch like something left out for a stray. My mother told me, through the screen door, that I wasn't clean enough to sit down in my work clothes. I was still in my grease-stained coveralls. Because I'd come straight from a double shift to make it there at all. This is Her Untold Stories. Hit subscribe right now. Because 7 years after that porch, my own sister found my face on the local news, and the family group chat went completely silent before her phone lit up with 89 calls in 1 hour. Welcome back. Turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. To understand how a plate on a porch turned into 89 phone calls 7 years later, I need to take you back to the family I grew up trying, and failing, to be good enough for. My name is Myra. I'm 31 now, and back then, at 24, I was working full-time as a diesel mechanic at a truck repair shop outside Tulsa, Oklahoma, one of the only women on the floor. And definitely the only one in my family who'd ever done work like that. I grew up the middle child of 5 with my mother Judith running the household with a very specific, very rigid idea of what a proper family was supposed to look like. My older sister Renee went to nursing school and became, in my mother's eyes, the family's crowning achievement. My younger siblings followed more conventional paths to retail management, teaching, one still in college. I was the one who dropped out of community college after 2 semesters because I couldn't afford it, took a job at a garage to make ends meet, and fell in love with the work almost by accident. My mother never quite forgave me for that path. She'd introduce me at church functions as my daughter who works with cars, in a tone that made it sound like a confession rather than an introduction. Grease under my fingernails became, over the years, something she treated as a personal embarrassment rather than evidence of an honest trade. It wasn't just about the job, though, if I'm honest. My mother had always run our family dinners like a performance for some invisible audience, matching table settings, a strict dress code for holidays, a real emphasis on how things looked rather than how anyone actually felt. I'd shown up to more than one family event in the past feeling like I was being graded on presentation rather than welcomed for showing up at all. Still, I kept showing up. That's the part I want to be honest about. Even after years of feeling like the family's rough edge, the one who didn't quite fit the picture, I kept driving the 40 minutes to my parents' house for every holiday, every birthday, every Sunday dinner I could make it to, because some part of me still believed that enough effort would eventually be enough, period. Thanksgiving, 7 years ago, fell on a day I was scheduled for a double shift at the shop, a shift I couldn't get anyone to cover, no matter how many people I asked. I told my mother weeks in advance that I might be a little late, that I'd come straight from work if I had to, and she said, and I remember this clearly, "That's fine, honey, just come when you can, we'll save you a plate." I believed her. I had no reason not to. That Thanksgiving, my double shift ran long. A fleet truck came in with a transmission problem 40 minutes before I was supposed to clock out, and there was no one else to hand it off to. By the time I finished, showered off what I could in the shop's cramped bathroom, and got on the road, it was almost 7 in the evening. I hadn't eaten since 6 that morning. I remember my hands shaking a little on the steering wheel, partly from hunger, partly from exhaustion, and partly from excitement. Because despite everything, I was looking forward to seeing my family. I pulled into my parents' driveway 45 minutes later than I'd hoped, still in my work coveralls, because I hadn't had time to change. And I could see through the front window that the family was already at the table, plates full, mid-meal. I remember feeling a small flash of guilt for being late and hurrying up the front walk. My mother opened the door before I could knock. She didn't invite me in. She looked me over my stained coveralls, the grease still faintly visible under my nails despite scrubbing at the shop's sink, and she said, "Myra, you can't come to the table looking like that. I've got your plate right here, I already fixed it for you." She pointed to the porch step, where a plate wrapped in aluminum foil was sitting next to the welcome mat. Already starting to go cold in the November air, I stood there for a moment, genuinely not understanding at first. I asked if I could just wash up quickly, change into the spare shirt I kept in my car. Anything. She said the table was already set the way it's set, that changing seats now would throw everything off, and that I could eat comfortably out on the porch or in my car. Whichever I preferred. Through the window behind her, I could see the table clearly. 8 place settings. My father, my mother's chair empty because she was at the door. Renee, my younger siblings. And 2 empty seats, one for my mother, and one, I realized with a slow, sinking feeling that had simply never been intended for me at all. There were 8 settings, and I had never been counted among them, work clothes or not. I didn't argue. I picked up the foil-wrapped plate from the porch step, walked back to my car, and sat in the driver's seat in my parents' driveway, eating a cold Thanksgiving dinner alone while I watched the warm light and movement through their dining room window. Nobody came out to check on me. Not my mother. Not my father. Not Renee, who I'd always believed, up to that point, actually cared about me beneath the family's performance of closeness. I finished what I could stomach, wrapped the rest back in the foil, and drove home in silence. I didn't cry until I was 2 exits down the highway, and once I started, I couldn't stop for a long time. I want to be clear about something. It wasn't really about the plate. It was about the 8 place settings and the fact that in 31 years on this earth, my own mother had never once imagined a version of the table that included me exactly as I was. That night, sitting alone in my apartment, I made a decision that felt less like anger and more like clarity. I wasn't going to keep showing up somewhere I had never actually been invited. The next morning, I sent one text to the family group chat. It said simply, "I'm taking some space from the family for a while. Please don't contact me until I reach out first." Then I muted the chat, and I didn't look at it again for a very long time. Going no contact wasn't a single dramatic decision so much as a series of smaller ones, repeated over months and then years. I blocked the family group chat first, then eventually most individual numbers, once it became clear that space wasn't going to be respected as anything more than a temporary inconvenience for them. I poured everything I had into the one place nobody had ever made me feel unwelcome, the shop floor. I took extra certifications on my own time, learned diesel diagnostics inside and out, and within 2 years I'd saved enough alongside a small business loan to buy out my aging boss when he decided to retire. I renamed the shop Whitfield Diesel and Fleet Repair, and put my own name on the sign for the first time in my life. The business grew faster than I expected. Fleet contracts led to more fleet contracts. Within 4 years, I'd opened a second location outside Oklahoma City. By year 6, I had 11 employees between both shops, 3 of them women I'd specifically made a point of mentoring, because I remembered exactly what it felt like to be the only one on the floor who didn't quite fit the picture people expected. Somewhere in year 3 of being no contact, I started something else, almost by accident. A former coworker mentioned that his elderly neighbor had nowhere to go for Thanksgiving, and I found myself inviting the man to join me at a folding table in my apartment. The next year, word spread, and 6 people showed up. By year 5, I was renting out the shop's largest bay, clearing it out, setting up long tables, and hosting what had become, without my really planning it, an annual Thanksgiving dinner for anyone in the community who didn't have anywhere else to be, truckers passing through, elderly neighbors, single parents working holiday shifts just like I used to. I called it simply the open table. No dress code, no seating chart. Every single person who walked through that garage bay door on Thanksgiving got a full plate and an actual seat, exactly as they were. It never once occurred to me in all those years that anyone from my old family might see it. I wasn't doing it for them. I was doing it, I think, for the 24-year-old version of myself who'd eaten a cold plate alone in a driveway, and for everyone else out there who'd ever felt like there wasn't room for them at somebody's table. This past Thanksgiving, 7 years after that Porch, a local news station reached out after hearing about the open table from one of the truckers I'd hosted the year before. They sent a small crew to film the dinner. Over 200 people that year, filling every long table we could fit into the shop's largest bay, a genuine, unpolished, mismatched kind of family that had built itself out of nothing but showing up for each other. The segment aired on the local 6 o'clock news the following Monday, with my face front and center, ladling gravy at the head of one of the tables, introduced as local business owner Myra Whitfield, who spent the last 5 years making sure no one in this community eats alone on Thanksgiving. I didn't think much about who might be watching. I found out later, through Renee, that our mother had the local news on, as she did most evenings, and had simply frozen when my face appeared on the screen. According to Renee, the family group chat, the one I'd left 7 years earlier, went completely silent for almost 20 minutes after someone posted a screenshot of the segment. And then, all at once, it exploded. My mother wanting to know why no one had told her I owned a business. My father asking if this was really the Myra they knew. Cousins, aunts, people I hadn't spoken to in years, suddenly very interested in reconnecting. Renee told me her phone lit up with 89 calls and messages in a single hour that night, nearly all of them somehow about me. I want to be honest about what I did next, because I think it matters more than any dramatic confrontation could have. I didn't unblock everyone. I didn't rush back into the family chat, thrilled to finally be seen. Renee was the only one I responded to, because she was the only one who reached out with an actual apology rather than a request to be let back into my life now that my life looked impressive from the outside. I told Renee the truth, that I wasn't interested in a relationship with people who'd only found room for me at a table once the whole town could see who sat at the head of it. That my door and my table was open to real conversations, real accountability and real change, not applause for a version of me they'd once left cold on a porch step. My mother reached out once, through Renee, asking to come to this year's open table dinner. I said she could come, on one condition that she sit exactly where she was seated, at whichever spot happened to be open when she arrived. No special arrangements, no head of the table, the same as every trucker, every widow, every single parent who walks through that door. I haven't heard back yet. I'm not holding my breath, and for the first time in my life, that's completely all right with me. Looking back, I think the hardest part wasn't the plate on the porch, or even the cold Thanksgiving in my car. It was realizing, over the years that followed, how much of my life I'd spent trying to earn a seat that was never actually going to be offered, no matter what I did or how I dressed. But I also learned something that's shaped everything I've built since. Nobody gets to decide your worth by where they seat you, or whether they seat you at all. Walking away from a table that was never truly set for you isn't bitterness, it's the cleanest, most honest boundary there is. And real family, I've learned, isn't about who shares your blood. It's about who makes absolutely sure you never eat alone again. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever felt like there wasn't room for you at your own family's table, I want to hear about it. Tell me in the comments below. I read every single one, and this community has become, in its own way, a table of its own. If you're new here, please consider subscribing to Her Untold Stories. New stories drop every week, and I promise you the table you build yourself is always sturdier than the one you were begging to sit at. Thank you for watching.